Okay, we're good. Well, welcome back. This particular session is kind of an open dialogue session. It's going to allow the audience to ask questions for our panelists. We're going to explore, I'll take them. We're going to explore perhaps legislation that needs to take place, what perhaps some changes within the industry, what might need to take place. It's a chance for the docs that are in the audience to ask our medical experts up here questions specifically related to whatever questions you might have in this industry. So this particular session was going to be moderated by Erik Stevens, but his flight was canceled this morning out of Miami. And so I'm going to ask Ron Watson, president of Watson Strategies, and Ron is also with Move, to kind of spearhead the discussion. So Ron, I shall turn it over to you, sir.
Well, good afternoon. I guess it's not quite afternoon, but it feels like that. It's been a wonderful conference. I can't thank everybody enough for yet again traveling from wherever you came from for another face-to-face. You know, a couple years without being able to do that, it made me realize how much I truly do enjoy these. It's still so nice for me all of these years later, coming together with like-minded individuals, being able to sit down and talk about this out in the open, to see the science, the brilliant people that we have up here on the stage. I've truly met some of the smartest, kindest, most generous people I ever have being a part of this industry. So for what it's worth, I'd just like to thank everybody for coming, all the speakers. It's just been an amazing conference as far as I'm concerned. So with all of that said, we have the esteemed panel up here. We'd like to make this a little short. If you want to talk about legislation, if you want to talk about the tax issue that just came up, anything that you all want to talk about, if you have questions, if there's anything about, hey, how can we make the conference better? We're going to continue to try to do these moving forward. We're open for suggestions. Anything that you all have to share with us, we're all ears. So with that, do we have any questions from the audience?
Anything on the horizon that medical patients can grow their own?
That's a great question. I'm not a lawyer, but I play one on TV, so you know you can't take my legal advice. But long story short, there is another constitutional amendment out there specifically for home grow. In Florida, to get a constitutional amendment, you have to have what's called single subject, and it's kind of already been determined that it's kind of hard to have one constitutional amendment that would have home grow and adult use in it. So I believe Regulate Florida has, after being kicked by the Supreme Court this last time, I believe Regulate Florida has circulated another petition that they're asking for signatures for that is, like you said, sure, specifically designed to authorize home grow. But interestingly enough, if only that one passed, we still would not have an adult use market because the language within that bill says that you cannot sell it. So it would be intriguing. It's my humble opinion that you would need two. You would need the Regulate Florida one that would allow you to grow at home, and then you may need another version of a constitutional amendment that actually authorizes a full-blown adult use market. So I'm not sure if that answered your. I'm sorry, say again?
I said I'm only interested in people that have a medical card to be able to save a little money and grow their own.
Interesting. I don't believe that the Regulate Florida constitutional amendment out there speaks to medicine. I think anybody. Now, it's interesting that you say that because one of the arguments I made, I'm perfectly fine with home grow, but I'm not necessarily fine with home grow for medicinal purposes. I would be better with home grow for adult use because you may not be the sickest of the sick and so forth. Maybe my panel disagrees with me, but that's my humble opinion.
No, I understand, but I think in Florida, we're only going to go in incremental steps. And I know that in California, my son lived there. He had a medical license and he was able to grow his own.
You cannot compare anything California does to what Florida does, unless you're comparing the extreme, ends of the spectrum.
I agree with you, Ron. Can you guys hear me? Okay, yeah, I agree. Because when it's homegrown, when you have the plant, it's medicinal, yes, but it's not pharmaceutical. It's not quantifiable. It's not dosable. Just like wine is medicinal. You're having that at home, right? You can't, you don't know what the whole entire makeup of that herb, that specific herb that they're using in a bong, in a joint. You don't know what the whole entire biological makeup of it is. So with Ron, separate the recreational and the pharmaceutical, we should say.
Doc, from another perspective, I think that the challenge with that I think about my medical patients, right? All of them. I'm not talking about recreational patients and patients who have, maybe some way more advanced experience in growing and making sure things are safe than I am. But I think about my run-of-the-mill medical patients who may try to do this. The concern that I have, because we are not a mature market, and patients really are new to this in the state of Florida, is how do they know that it's safe? So for example, when we look at, you cannot see aspergillus, you cannot see certain microbes. Are they going to invest in testing and safety for themselves? How are they going to use it? So that is a concern that I have. I think we would need to make sure those are okay. For me to feel great as a physician that my patient can, do a home grow safely and know what's in it, just like Dr. Jenny says. That's just another perspective. And I see you shaking your head and you disagree, and that's okay. I just know that those are my concerns.
The reality is that the majority of people are using the black market to get cannabis products, and they're using it for medical conditions. And we are deluding ourselves to think that everybody who is using cannabis for medicinal purposes is getting it from a dispensary. They're not.
Oh,
I agree with
yeah.
you. I agree
We
with
agree
you
to
in
that.
that. I do think though, for example, the panel that's up here, if there are some things we would be responsible for if we tell our patients, yeah, here's a website, here's how you do this, here's where you learn how to do this. I think from a liability standpoint, we are far from that. However, patient wants to, I don't even want to know, because black market and home grow to me would end up being the same as far as I'm concerned, in terms of safety, consistency, efficacy, all of that.
And these are some of the things I think too, we need a lobby for. We have to have the recreational dispensaries, right? So people don't have to go to the black market. So people can go to a dispensary and know that it's being pharmaceutically grown, that there's no bacteria, that there's no parasites, that there's no contaminations and heavy metals, right? I've personally tested lots of herbs from the black market, and some of the things that you find in there, I'm like, well, no wonder you have a fungal infection. The herb you're smoking is loaded with it. And they're like, wait, what? So people don't know, but they're desperate, right? And a lot of people don't want to go and get their cannabis cards because they're gun holders, and there's a lot of misconceptions with that. And they think they're going to be put into a system, or right, that their HIPAA rights are being violated, that they're, and I get it. And we hear those cries. I hear it, right? So I think consecutively as a medical community, it's our responsibility to go before our lobbyists, to go before, we have a lobbyist right here. He's one of my good friends, right? He hears us. So in order to make change, we have to go to our lobbyists that represent us, the people, and the medical professionals that represent the consumers that are asking for these things, right? I want to see regulation in the recreational, arena, and I want to see more regulation in the medical pharmaceutical arena too. It's
Okay.
needed.
Yeah, this has been a big issue in many states that have passed medical and adult use programs. Typically, the states that do allow home grows, this is included in the legislation when they pass their medical program, and it's based on the demographics of the state when they pass that, if they've got the support to put something like that in the law. And I agree that the way we do change it is through lobbying, if there is support for it in this community. The reason these cannabis laws have been passed, it's not necessarily that we've got double-blind placebo-controlled studies for every medical condition. These cannabis laws are being passed for harm reduction. People have been using cannabis for thousands of years. It's been steeped in our human culture, and making it federally illegal did not stop people from using it. It just filled up our prison systems with people that have been using it. So the one thing is for sure is I definitely don't want to see people going to jail because they're growing it in their home, or because their family or their culture has been growing it for thousands of years. So I think that this is definitely something that needs to be part of the discussion.
Hi, everybody, and I apologize that I was a few moments late. My name is Erik. I'm the board chair for Minorities for Medical Marijuana. I wear a few other hats as well, but I'll leave it at that for now. You know, I agree with you to some degree. I certainly support adult use. I don't really like the term recreational because I believe as an adult, you can determine what you put in your body. You are intelligent enough to determine that. I also do believe in home grow because I know the best cucumbers I've ever tasted grew in my backyard that I grew myself, and I believe that people can grow this plant on their own. However, I want to address the underlying concern that I heard from you because I also think there's a larger issue at hand, and it's the affordability. You talked about wanting home grow in order to save a few dollars. And that's one of the things that we haven't addressed here in this state is how do we make this affordable and accessible for everybody? I represent communities of color which have bore the brunt of the war on drugs and still are locked out from the economic benefit as well as the medicinal benefit because they can't afford it. I think we can address that in a number of different ways. Obviously, if we open up and have more licenses in the state, we create competition. Prices, will be dictated by the market. That will address affordability. I also think if we address it from a diversity standpoint, right now the state is only going to issue one license to a Black farmer. If we issue 10 licenses to Black farmers or others, farmers in rural areas and so on, we would see that dispensaries would begin to be located in the communities that allow for people to have access to it. So these are some of the things that I believe are the path forward. I agree with everybody here. This has to be done through our legislator. But I want you to be able to grow at home, but I also want you to have access to good quality medicine if you have a condition that actually requires that. I've seen what it looks like at a home grow. I've also seen what it looks like at a facility where you have actual scientists, you have pharmacologists, you have others who are approaching this from a science base and are trying to address those medical conditions that you have. And I think that is absolutely necessary, and we need to protect that as well.
If I could just add one thing, I stole a line. I think it was from your first or second conference, Gene, years ago. A gentleman was asked, what do you believe the difference between adult use and medical use is? And I thought it was a simplistic, brilliant answer that he gave. He said, well, the way I look at it is regardless of whether your mama tells you to eat Brussels sprouts or you choose to eat them on your own, doesn't your body get the exact same nutrition? Now, to me, it's much bigger than that because it's access and education, right? So Mama Bear has the access and the education, but as Erik said, when you're an adult, I think you should be able to make adult decisions. And so I just always thought that was very, very intriguing because to me, really the only difference between medical and adult use is education and access and knowing what it's helping. Because whether you do this for fun or whether your doctor is telling you exactly what it's going to happen to you, doesn't your body get the same nutrition?
And I think that one big difference between adult use and medical use is personal responsibility on the side of the person that's using it. If you're using it in medical use and under a medical supervised situation or setting, you have a physician that's helping to, again, oversee it. When it's adult use, you're taking personal responsibility for your choices and for what you're using. And that's not just with cannabis, that's with nutrition, that's with alcohol use, that's with, whatever we decide to do.
You got any other questions?
Really quickly, right now we live in a world where people have access to YouTube, Google, and they're self-educating themselves. So just to piggyback off what you were saying, people are they're getting the information and they're able to actually learn how to cultivate and make their own medicinal products themselves. We're also living in a world where you can pick up CBD and Delta 8 products from the gas station. So people are very leery about going to these dispensaries, and they're going to places like California where you can't compare to Florida, and they're getting the best of the best products in California or Colorado or Oregon, and they're coming back here looking for that same medicinal value and they can't find it. So what they do is they go on Google, they go on YouTube, and they find a way to make and replicate that same product they received in California. So sometimes if we're not able to bring in or have the same products in these other states, and we have patients here that need, I don't see why they're not able to actually cultivate maybe a small, amount for themselves. Not necessarily recreational. Maybe it could be a medicinal thing that they are getting better medicine other places than Florida.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody up here agrees that, again, we want you to be able to grow it at home. We have no problem with it. But to say that what you can do at home is going to, account or equate to what someone who has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on equipment to do it at a very precise measure, you're comparing apples to oranges. It's like, I love to cook, but when I go to a Darden restaurant, I know I have a chef there who has gone to culinary school, who understands it from who's done pairings and so on. And so again, I don't think that, it has to be an either or, right? I think that we can have both. And I think what our organization attempts to do is to educate people about the differences. In fact, just yesterday, we had a medical marijuana card clinic through one of our corporate partners. We paid for their doctor visit. Our medical director was there to be able to sit with patients and meet with them and be able to help them get their card. We are removing the affordability as well as providing the access. And now I'm not, suggesting that those people are going to necessarily only get their products from a dispensary. But if they're dealing with a condition that, requires, or I believe, requires them to get something that is more specific and specialized to what they're dealing with. If someone's dealing with Alzheimer's, sure, they can make it at home, but I prefer they get it from a medical dispensary that has been doing the research, that has done the R&D on trying to deliver a product. But I know there's a fear because pharmaceutical companies haven't done the best by human beings, period, right? And so there's a fear there. But that's why I go back to the issue of bringing in more diversity into the industry, opening up the industry, making it more horizontal so you have different access points, you have different people along the supply chain to be able to add that value there.
Because I have the clinic as well. So I own 2 clinics, and the majority of my patients that come in. So that's good that you said that too, because my clinic is in urban areas. I'm going to accommodate the urban community. So I own the clinic, and when people are calling me and say, hey, I want my card, I have PTSD, I have this, I have that. But when I get my card, you know that they're not going to go to the dispensary. You can tell the people who are not going to go to the dispensary, they just get in their card so they can continue to get it off the black market and kind of be protected under the law, which I'm letting them know it has to be in this type of packaging. It cannot be outside of this. It has to match, has to have your name. So they're notified, but everybody's going to have a way around that. Take something out the black market, put it in the packaging. So just what I'm trying to say is this. The reason why people are maybe going back to the black market because the options aren't available to them as they are in other places. So maybe cultivating themselves may not be the option, but I think that the diversity, like you said, needs to be in Florida because that's the problem that I'm running into. And it's hard to make that connection from the doctor's office to the dispensary in those urban areas if they're not getting those proper.
Well, by the end of the year, we should have, 20 more licenses?
Yeah.
Hopefully all goes well here in Florida, which rarely happens, but we should have another 20 licenses here in the state by the end of the year, which hopefully will, again, bring greater competition, greater product diversity, greater diversity in terms of the industry as a whole. Again, I remain hopeful. I remain in the fight trying to make sure that happens. So.
But to address that too, I'll be honest with you. I talked to a lot of doctors and there's been some opportunities for suppositories. And unfortunately, I don't think anybody makes them anymore. I'm trying really hard to push suppositories out of my company again. But I've been told by a lot of doctors that they will then teach their patient how to make their own. So I think to a certain extent, there's some of that going on. If there is a lack of product actually in the MMTCs, I don't know if the doctors will agree, but I've talked to several who have told me that they just teach their patients how to do it themselves because they can't buy it in a dispensary. And I thought, that's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And, suppositories are tough because since they are basically good mostly for local conditions, there's not as much of a demand for them, but they are very good for certain individuals. And I definitely teach my patients how to get RSO or a full spectrum oil that they can use and to make their own suppositories. And that's botanical herbal medicine for you, right? We adapt.
And in the specialty pharmaceutical sector, I make suppositories and rectal rockets for my patients. They'll bring in their ingredients for us to put in, you know, because they're suffering from anal fissures or pelvic floor pain or vaginitis, vaginosis. These are things that women are going over the counter for toxic big pharmaceutical ingredients. And then cannabinoids are antifungal, they're antibacterial. So the suppositories, this is an example of a pharmaceutical product. It needs to be made in a pharmaceutical facility that has the sterile equipment, right, that you were talking about, where we're trained to do that. Right? The dispensaries don't have that. They don't have pharmacists working in the dispensaries. They don't have scientists. They don't have a PhD microbiologist making sure, okay, when we're making these suppositories, are you USP 797 compliant? Are you USP, right? These are all regulations from the pharmaceutical world. So again, lobbying, maybe having, you know, different types of facilities, we got to have a conversation, you know, just to give the consumers access to medications like that that are truly, truly functional, right? I know all the women that I know women that get fungal infections, yeast infections every single month because they drink a lot. They, you know, their diets are not as healthy. They drink too much coffee. They're constantly throwing off their pH, right? So it's needed. Probiotics with cannabinoids.
Let me ask a quick question.
Yeah.
Eric, you mentioned R&D. What's the state of R&D research related to cannabis right now in the U.S.? Has there been advances? And maybe Dr. Desilva, you can chime in on this because I know you've done some clinical trials.
You know, right now, if you are a small business or a you know, a minority business, I mean, it's tough for everybody to get capital to do anything in this space. But the R&D that I've been, you know, aware of happens typically at the larger companies and so on. But their R&D is always focused, is driven by the numbers. I mean, I get an email every Friday from the Office of Medical Marijuana Use of how much, you know, product is being sold here in the state. And if you look at how much flour is being sold versus, you know, everything else, you know, then it fails in comparison. So as a company here in this state, they're going to make products based on what the demand in the market is. And I think that, you know, it makes it tougher for the, you know, those more effective products that don't have maybe such a high demand to get into the market. But, you know, I know for my company, I'm on the hemp side of things, but we are, you know, in research and development on a few different things. We work with hemp hearts, which are a plant-based protein. Most people don't know the same seed we use to grow this plant is a superfood. And so we're actually writing a USDA grant right now, and we're focused on, you know, climate smart agricultural products, but then developing markets for the products that are derived from the hemp seed and so on, which we believe is very much a part of the medical cannabis conversation, because we can't talk about all of the you know, smokable flower and the vapes and the herbs and not talk about what we're also eating and putting into our body as diet. So, but, you know, I'll pass the mic for that.
You know, the whole idea of R&D, thank you. The whole idea of research and development, I think, is critical. You know, you talk to the legislators, you talk to anybody, physicians. You know, you talk to doctors, and I speak at a lot of conferences, and still in our hospital, there's so much misinformation, especially within the medical field. And the thing that drives me out of my mind, it just drives me out of my mind, is when somebody says to me, well, there isn't enough research on that. I just want to slap them. You know, it just is so disheartening. And I feel like saying to them, there is so much research that there are textbooks written on this stuff. You know, so don't tell me that there isn't enough research. We just published a paper in Clinics in Medicine on the anti-inflammatory effects of full spectrum hemp oil. No, this is a peer-reviewed journal. It shows that in COVID, that, again, a lot of you probably heard this, but in COVID, it really prevented the whole cytokine storm. So it's not a primary therapy, but it's an adjunctive therapy. And I think we need to just continue to do this. We were very fortunate that we did get, part of it was funded by the NIH. So, we've got a real yeah. I mean, they funded half of our study. So, and these aren't inexpensive by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, they're hundreds of thousands of dollars. For the psychedelic study that I'm doing, I mean, I raised over $3 million to do this study. So it's not, and that's not a lot of money when you think about clinical studies and going through the FDA. But, and I think, big companies that have the resources, I think it's part of your responsibility, part of our responsibility as clinicians to all get involved and really put out some data. And the next time somebody says there isn't enough research, you slap them with the paper, literally, not figuratively.
Yeah, and I like to address that too. The legislature created something called the consortium, and they just met last week. It's run by the University of Florida, and there's 9 other universities that are all coming together with research. It was a fascinating meeting to go to. They talked about doling out $2 million from the state. There were people there applying for grants. There were young people there defending their whiteboards and all of this stuff. It was just absolutely fascinating. So we're actually paying for it by the state of Florida now. The other issue is I like to remind everybody, we have a clinical trial going on right now in the state of Florida with over 723,000 patients in it. You know why? Because we know every single doctor that wrote the actual recommendation. We know every condition. We know every product. We have more data on the medical marijuana of 700,000 people in Florida. And one of the things I was talking about with the consortium, and hopefully they'll be able to work this out, is that for whatever reason right now, they don't have access to the data in the registry. So imagine what that consortium could do with access, de-identified, all HIPAA compliant, with 723,000 patients in a clinical trial, not 40 or 50, which is amazing. 700,000 plus. So it is way past time that, in my humble opinion, the consortium starts digging into that information. And I'm going to see if I can help them.
I'll add one other thing. Again, going back to the demand for products as well, right? And I think it goes back to the question earlier about the need for both, because if you have only MMTCs that are going to be driven by data that says that people want smokable flower, so grow smokable flower, put that on the shelves. That's what people want. Then you won't get the suppositories. You won't get the transdermal patches. You won't get the very highly specialized formulations that target and that are made for specific conditions, because that market will be drowned out by the flower market. So I think over time, I think in general across the country, we will see a level of maturity come to the medical side of cannabis that will kind of resemble, or not even resemble, but I think will align itself much more closely to a traditional compounding pharmacology model. And that I think is a good thing in my opinion.
Well, I'm on pitch move here a little bit. We have a meter dose inhaler. We spent a lot of money on research and development to perfect that. We don't sell a lot of them, but the ones we do sell them to are so helpful. A lot of young children, it's probably the quickest way to get the medicine in during seizures or whatever. We've been told that they are just so blessed by ours. And so I am encouraged. It's not all about sales, but unfortunately we are a business and we have to, continue to move forward. So it's a balancing act. It really is.
Ron, if I can say something, because I have
Please.
the opportunity
Yeah,
here with you, just here, take this back. That MDI is great. What I have found patients having struggles with is coughing. Whatever the delivery that's happening is causing the cough. So whatever they can do, I don't
Okay.
know, in terms of processing or however the particles
We
are.
also suggest the extenders sometimes too. I don't know if that would help with coughing or not, or whatever
Yeah.
the actual thing
Yeah,
that
and
extends
so
it out.
we don't get a lot of opportunities for them to go back.
Okay.
And of course, my experience is colored by the window, by the demographic that I serve, which is the geriatric population.
Fair enough.
So, a younger population will be more apt to try some new things. They have a negative experience. They tend to not, give a whole lot, but just wanted to.
Great
relay that.
feedback. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And I've seen it used for emphysema and for asthma, right?
Yeah.
Children that have replaced their steroid inhalers that are toxic and degenerating their endocrine system. And now they have a replacement with a metered dosed inhaler that's cannabinoids that acts as a bronchodilator. It's awesome.
We have Move, I believe, is the only one that still has it. And honestly, we spent a lot of money on R&D to be able to get to that level. And again, like you said, it's not like we're making a whole lot of money off of it. I wish we could get it out to more people, but I'm going to go down swinging to make sure we don't lose that product.
And you.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Gels, creams, capsules, we got them all.
And you got to remember, we're fighting a battle with the big pharmaceutical companies with all of their, big pharmaceutical drugs for pulmonary issues, for emphysema, for asthma, right? For coughing, right? We don't have the dispensaries, the cannabis community. It's dependent on the medical community and the consumers. They have thousands of pharmaceutical reps going to doctors' offices, pushing their drugs. We don't have that. We can't even advertise on TV, right? So we don't have the commercials or ask your doctor if the meter-dosed cannabinoid inhaler is great for you. Side effects include better health,
Yeah.
right?
I've always said, imagine if we had to list the
Can you-
side effects of cannabis on our commercials. Wouldn't that be fun?
Right. Better sleep, better sex, better moods, no depression.
Hello, everyone. Too close. My name is Andres. I'm a graduate student. I also work for Certera as a guide. Very basic level, but I'm here because it's my interest. I'm very interested in this field. Feedback for Trulieve. The nasal spray Canatol RX is a lifesaver for these two epileptics right here.
Awesome.
And thank you so much for research and development for that product.
One of the issues with delivery systems, one of the things that I've worked on for 30 years have to do with delivery systems. And in order to get any product, any substance, any quote, and I hate to use the word chemical, but any substance into our body, whether it's topical, whether no matter what it is, there has to be a delivery system. So for you to have improved, perfected a delivery system with regard to an inhaler is remarkable because you have to look at particle size. I mean, there's all kinds of things that go into that. Think about how this inhaler would directly affect people. And again, I'm sorry I'm coming back to COVID, but that's very topical right now because there are still people that are dying from this disease, from this virus. The reason that people are getting into trouble is pulmonary. It's pulmonary and it's vascular. Why are people getting blood clots? People are getting blood clots because you end up going into a hypercoagulable state. Why are people having respiratory problems? Because there's inflammation within the bronchioles. Imagine if we could give these people immediate relief, because the first thing, and you can easily measure this by doing an oximeter at home. This is not some esoteric thing that you need to do. You give them an oximeter, you do a puff, and you're going to see improvement.
Yeah.
So, I think as medical, and like I'm a clinician, I do some research, but I'm a clinician. I see patients every day. Anything I can do to improve the quality of life of my patients and give them better survival, and I mean that literally today, I will do. And they will do. Whether it's grown at home or grown in the sky or grown on the moon, I don't really care. If it's going to help them, we need to do it.
Amen.
And I'm not running for politics.
Yet.
No.
Anybody else? Well, if not, I just can't thank you all enough for being. Oh, please, sorry, sir.
I was just going to follow up on the comment about the Canatol, and thank you for making that comment. I feel so honored to have been invited to work for a company like Trulieve that does have resources. We do have a good R&D department with chemists, and I meet with the R&D department every other week, and we talk about bioavailability and improving our products. We're looking at research partnerships with universities to look at better bioavailability and to do studies on the bioavailability to be able to back that up with research as well. So again, and I will take those comments back to leadership. And the other thing about the leadership of Trulieve is that they believe in this, they believe in these medicines and serving the community, and they are putting their money where their mouth is as far as trying to improve those products for our patients. So thank you so much for that comment.
Anybody else? Anybody up here have any closing comments? Because I can't, again, thank you enough for y'all's valuable time. Anything that you want to say for the good of the group?
One of the things that I would really like to emphasize to the clinicians in here is this is a very, very, very significant modality. This was the first botanical that was used in traditional Chinese medicine 5,000 years ago. So the science is there, and that's number one. Number two, again, this is part of a treatment plan. We have to get our patients to get serious about their health. We have to set an example. When I say we as clinicians, as practitioners, have to set an example of what we do, how we act, how we react, and what we take, whether it's supplements, hormones, etc. And as a community, as a group, if we can set an example, and I tell people this all the time, how does a bird learn how to fly? The way a bird learns how to fly is by watching their mama, and they're watching their dad. We have to set the example. And once we set that example, I think we will be followed in a much better, in a much safer way. So, bust their chops, make them do what they have to do, and smack them around once in a while if you have to.
Anybody else? Well, a note of personal privilege, I would like to thank Jean and Dana Jones for their wonderful work. It's a lot of hard work to put one of these things on behind the scenes, and we just show up and we get to come up here and tell everybody what we know. But thank you, Jean and Dana, for organizing all of this, and I look forward to next year. Safe travels, everyone. God bless.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody. Thank you, panel.
Thank you.
I appreciate your involvement and sitting around for the last day. And I think that was some great dialogue to close it up. Just as a quick reminder, I will have all the proceedings out to everybody probably Wednesday. I'll get it all packaged and emailed out to everybody, which will include the recordings as well as the PDF of the presentations. So thank you, everybody. Have a safe trip home.
Thank you.